So, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class number 175. I think we're going to have to interrupt our normal sequence of classes talking about Simchas Torah, Bereshit, etc., because people are going to have questions about what's happening in Israel, and that's very understandable. So I'm not going to say that I'm some sort of gross chacham, some big chacham, and I have all the answers or any answers. Maybe not. I don't have any answers, and that's good. It's good to sometimes say I don't have the answers, but that doesn't mean that the intellectual answers are the full scope of what the soul is capable of embracing. If it was, we'd be a very bad situation because most of Jewish history has been questions about what's going on and not having answers to what's going on and suffering an awful lot. The one thing we know about Jewish history is that we are one lamb among 70 wolves, and although we have to do everything possible within our might to organize and protect ourselves the way we're supposed to. Ultimately, it's not kochi va'atzum yadi, the power of my hand, that is able to accomplish everything. But ultimately, it's God that's kept us alive because there have been many nations far bigger than us, far more powerful than us, who probably wanted to wipe us off completely off the face of the earth, and yet we're still around and they're disappeared. So it's a proof that ultimately there's a God in charge, and he makes sure that the Jewish people survive. So that's the first thought that I think we should have at this point in time. A second thought is that, we thought, the Israeli army, the intelligence service especially, was Mossad and Shin Bet were, really on top of things. And again, maybe, too much trust in that because there was clearly an intelligence failure. Nobody's pointing fingers exactly what went wrong, who, where. They probably were reporting what was wrong, and the political powers just didn't want to listen to them. That's what happened in the 73 war. The Rebbe was crying bitterly, saying, you have all the information. You know that there's going to be a sneak attack on 73 in the Yom Kippur War. And they deliberately chose to avoid it because they were afraid of what would the other nations, the European Union, America, other things think about it if we attacked first. So they said deliberately that they would wait. And there was tremendous casualties. And the Rebbe was bitter about it because you don't mix political decisions into military matters. No more than you would mix political decisions into medical matters. And this is a case of Pikuach Nefesh, saving Jewish lives. And so you shouldn't mix in all sorts of political calculations of what's supposed to be done. In fact, I think if you want to know what the moral thing to do is, and this is what I heard from Rabbi Manis Friedman, says it's ridiculous to have a war go on and on and on for 10, 20 years, on and on and on. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. It's not good for anybody. So when you have an enemy who's a sworn enemy, and we know that this was a sworn enemy, nobody, you don't send off 5,000 missiles in an hour without a tremendous amount of the mass amount of the population involved and 1,000 terrorists over the border by paragliders, etc. This was a mass campaign against the Jewish people, and therefore the appropriate response is to respond to that in a way that they understand. And what I mean by they understand, I mean the first thing that they teach you when you go into the State Department or something is you have to not only know the language, you have to know how they think. And the way that the Arab mind thinks, and especially the Muslim mind thinks, is they're not interested when we talk about the Warren Commission and the UN and democracy. They hate those ideas because they're all Western ideas. They believe that it's God behind everything. And so the more you talk in this language that says that you bring more sophisticated Western concepts to them, they're not interested in it, and it infuriates them. And the more that you say the following, which the Israeli government unfortunately keeps doing over and over again. Oh, we're willing to make compromises. We're willing to go back, give away land. The only thing that the Arab mind hears when they hear that is one thing, and that is, we would never give away anything that really belongs to us. Are you kidding? Allah is on our side. It's right. It's wrong, and we would never give it away. So if you're willing to give it away, you probably stole it. You're the thieves because you feel guilty. And they see what happens in the Jewish press and then what's happening in Israel. And this all gives them food for fighting. It encourages them to attack us more. We got to stop doing this. It's just not, it's the wrong thing. Don't, anyone who is a politician or a leadership in the Jewish people have to know that the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people by God. And we're there on a mission, not to rule over anybody, but in order to fulfill the mission of God in this world. That's why we were given this particular area of land, and it's not impinging on anybody else, unless you think somehow that the very fact that the Jewish people exist is a problem, which unfortunately for many people that's exactly the problem. It's a fascinating idea. We just started Chumash Bereshit, and I said we wouldn't connect Bereshit, but I saw it, and of course it sticks out to me because the Rebbe emphasized this line over and over and over again. The first line of Bereshit says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God created the heavens. In the beginning of God's creation, he created the heavens and the earth. Rashi comments on this. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said the following. He said, why does it have to start out with the creation of the world? Or is a book of laws. It's trying to tell us how to be good Jews. Start with the first law in the Chumash. Start with the law of Chodesh Tiyeh Lechem. This is the first month, will be the first of the months, which is what was given to Moses when they were leaving the land of Egypt. What would be wrong with that? You can tell people later on how the world was created, but the first thing should be to start laying down the groundwork of saying, here's the Jewish mission, and it is to be able to fulfill Torah and do mitzvahs and to bring the world and everybody else in the world up to a higher level. So it is a question, and it's a good question, and it's an important question. So Rashi immediately in the very first pasuk in Chumash addresses this question, and he says, because the nations of the world are going to say that you are thieves. The nations are going to say, at least the nations of the world, meaning the non-Jews, are going to come to the Jews and say, you are thieves. You stole the land of Israel. It belonged to the Canaanites. It even says it in your Torah, and then you conquered it, and therefore you're thieves. You're taking it away from us. Why is this the very first thing that you're supposed to know at the very beginning of reading the Chumash Bereshit, so the whole Torah? Why is this the most important thing to know? So Rashi says it, but the Rebbe says, it's a good question. Why is this so important? So the problem is as follows. It's not just to give us an answer of why the land of Israel belongs to us, the non-Jews. The problem isn't only the non-Jews, as I said before. The problem is that Jewish people don't really feel confident and think that we are really honestly deserve and are able to be here in this world. In a certain way, we've been affected by all the anti-Semitic stereotypes that have happened over the years, and we feel somehow we've internalized the fact that somehow we don't really belong here in this world. What do I mean by belong in this world? I mean, they say that Jewish is a religion. A religion doesn't have a country. France has a country. Germany has a country. People's nations have countries. Religions don't have countries. You don't need a country. You're holy people, so be holy. Don't do anything. Don't be involved. What are you involved with having a land and doing and in control and running a country, etc.? It shouldn't be yours. It belongs to this world belongs to non-Jews. That's the argument. Because the argument doesn't make any sense otherwise. I mean, all of the nations, if you look at any of the history, America was conquered from the Indians. We stole it. And every other country, from Russia to Germany to France to England, it was all captured at one point in time. They were not the original people. The people living in Egypt now are not the original Egyptians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Arabs conquered the whole Middle East. They didn't belong in that area. They come from Arabia. They don't even come from that area of the Palestine and so forth. You're all thieves. Yeah, everybody steals, land and so forth and so forth. So that doesn't make that's not the problem. The problem is that we somehow feel that we don't belong in this world. And what it is no, you have to tell them first off, God created the world. And God created the world means that he chose the Jewish people and he chose the land of Israel and and he gave us a particular mission. And our mission is to be able to turn the physical world and what's inside of it into something holy. So that also is the answer to also of how we can help the Jewish people right now in Israel too, very much. We should help if we can help physically, if we can give donations, if some people want to volunteer to go fight, whatever, that's fine. That's one part. But again, as I said at the very outset, the major strength of the Jewish people at this point in time is not necessarily the brilliance of our intelligence service, seems to have failed us, or how good the calculations of the military is. It's ultimately God has made miracle after miracle, even in the face of stupid decisions in the political hierarchy, et cetera, and he is the one in charge. So when we do and we commit to doing one more mitzvah, to doing one more thing, then that actually helps bring more spiritual energy. So say to him, do more mitzvahs, inspire other people to do it. I was listening to Rabbi Wolf. He had an interesting take on the whole thing. Rabbi Ruvain Wolf. Oh, right. Is there other Rabbi Wolves? No. Okay. So Rabbi Ruvain Wolf. And he was saying as follows, interesting thing. When the Jews were coming up from Egypt and coming to the land of Israel for the first time with Moses, a nation came out and attacked the Jewish people. And they were disguised. And they were disguised. They wanted the Jews to think that they were one thing, but so the Jews would pray to God to destroy the wrong people. They were actually Amalekites, and they were dressed up as I don't know what they're dressed up, Edomites or something like that. They wanted the Jews to think that they were Edomites and they would pray to God to get rid of Edom, and they were Amalekites, and nothing would happen. And they attacked the Jewish people at their strength. And they came and they captured a Jewish girl and brought her back to their territory. And God then told Moses, then the Jewish people all swore that they would devote themselves to Hashem more strongly. And anything that they captured, they would not take for themselves, but they would fight, and they would fight honestly, and they would give everything over to Hashem that they captured back. So Rabbi Ruvain Wolf was looking at this today. The book had just opened up at that point. He was wondering, what is he going to say? And he said, I was thinking about the parallels here. When did this whole thing happen? It happened when the clouds of glory departed from the Jewish people, which were protecting the Jews, and they departed because Aaron died, and therefore they were left unprotected. And then somebody came and attacked them. What does this sound like? We know the sukkahs. The walls of the sukkah are symbolic of the Anani Kav, of the clouds of glory, and they protect the Jewish people. And as soon as Sukkot was over, that's when this thing happened. And they came a group of people from, it says that Amalek is a Ritzua, a strap, always prepared to attack the Jewish people whenever they get weak. What does Ritzua mean? Ritzua means a lash or a bullwhip, but it can also mean a strip. In other words, they came from the Gaza Strip. They came from the Strip. They were pretending to be Hamas, but they were really Iranians because this whole plot was planned by the Iranians behind the scene. And they came and they captured Jewish girls and they took them back with them. Doesn't that sound very familiar? Very, very, very significant. And how did the Jewish people deal with this? They said, you know what? He's right. We got somehow lax in what we were serving. We're now going to be 100% committed to everything that we do here. And even the battle that we fight is going to be fought on a completely up and up basis. And everything that we do here is going to be fought in the name of God. And we're going to do this because we're protecting Jewish souls. And it's a mitzvah to protect Jewish people. It's not a mitzvah to protect people who are pretending to be civilians, but really are terrorists behind the scene. So, and if you let Jewish people die in order to save people who are faking to pretend to be civilians, that's not moral. So, all in all, what are we saying here? We're saying the following. We're saying, listen, God is in control and God runs the world. And we don't necessarily know how it all plays out or how these different theories are going to work and so forth of that sort. We know what we have to do. We have to unite and strengthen the Jewish people. If anybody was following the news before this happened of what was going on in Israel, you saw all sorts of really extreme kind of fragmentation and hatreds and all sorts of really unacceptable kind of behaviors. And hopefully this is all a wake-up call for the Jewish people. We're all in this together. I mean, when they start attacking one place in Israel, it means all of it, and they mean every single Jew. And it already has started spreading to other places a little bit. So not to be afraid, but to realize that, you know what, God is calling us to be united. And when we're united, there's nothing that can stop us. There's nothing. Because, it's what God says at the end of why he made the whole holiday of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Kasher li paradchem. It's very hard for me. You're leaving me. So stay an extra day. The Rebbe explains that your leaving is going to happen anyway. At the end of the holidays, everybody goes back to work and doesn't spend all their time with God. What he's hinting at is don't separate yourself from each other. When Jews are united and Jews are together, then I feel comfortable being among you. I feel being your God. It's a father with all his kids. He's happy to be with his family. When they're fighting and squabbling among each other, it's not a pleasant situation. You don't want to be home. So ultimately, we have to do things that, for our brethren who are sometimes extremely confused by the media and lost and so forth, have a lot of sympathy for them, a lot of kindness for them, a lot of warmth to them. Bring Jewish people home, do good things, and we're all in this together, and we're all one family, and we're all children of Abraham. We all belong together, and hopefully, with those ideas, we'll get some chizuk out of this. And with that, I'll hand it over to my wife, and I hope that I didn't violate any of her dictates that she gave me about how to give the class over. She has a lot of things for me. Okay. All right. Let me continue and.
Let's go see poor guy. Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy everybody is here. And Dina, I got your phone call. And okay, so I'm going to begin. Does somebody want to say something before I begin? Okay. So I'm going to begin with that over here. I'm going to begin with what I always begin with. Despite what happened over the weekend, we are still in an extraordinary time, and we are in the playing out of the final strains of the whole history of the world, which is that Mashiach is coming, and we're going to see the revelation of Hashem's power. May this be the last hurrah of the forces that oppose us. And we know that our souls are chosen to be here at this time, and that we have all the tools we need to navigate this time. Just 1 second. And that learning about Mashiach and Geula is the best way we can defend the Jewish people and the best way we can advance the cause of redemption. So I want to go straight to the topic. And I'm surprised Eskil didn't mention it, so I'll mention it. I'm going to close the door because there's a conversation. So most people, when they hear things like what happened on this weekend, The first question is, where was Hashem? What is this? I thought we are the Jewish people and we're his beloved nation. We try so hard for him. Where was Hashem? So that's the question that the Yetzer, it's a question that everybody has. It's a natural question. And it's not only just the Yetzer, it is a natural question. And the Rebbe, I think it was in the 50s, there was a horrible attack on Kfar Chabad, and many, nothing like this. No, not the amount of people who died. It was not like this. There was a terrible attack on the new Jewish town of Kfar Chabad, which was built mostly for mostly for Russian immigrants, and and the Rebbe didn't go into the why and the where of what Hashem is doing. He went into the what we can do, because that's really the most productive avenue to go down. And he said, when something like this happens, the response is to build. The response is to rebuild Kfar Chabad, build Jewish institutions around the world, build new things, build new mitzvahs. That is the Jewish response. So ironically, it was extremely devastating news for all of us. And one of the most comforting things that I came across, that I thought about, was it happens to be the Parsha of Bereshit, and I teach I teach first graders, and I do short segments with the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds too. And I teach the 6-year-olds, 6 and 7-year-olds. But so there's a medrash. A medrash is sort of like an allegory that explains very deep concepts in the Torah in a very simple way. And there's an allegory about, as everybody knows, even before the world existed, there was the Torah. And before the Torah, there was the Aleph base and the souls of the Jewish people. And when Hashem wanted to write the Aleph base, when Hashem wanted to write the Torah, remember, this is an allegorical explanation of something very deep. It's made as an allegory because it's too deep for us to comprehend. So Hashem gives us an allegory to get to be able to touch the concept. So when Hashem wanted to create the Torah, all the letters of the Aleph base, which already existed, wanted to be the first letter in the Torah. And they campaigned in front of Hashem, oh, please pick me. I want to be the first letter in the Torah. For example, the Sav, the last letter, said, Hashem, I'm the biggest, each letter has a numerical value, and Sav has the last letter has the largest numerical value. It said, I have the largest numerical value, and I start many holy words. Hashem said, I'm sorry, and he gave the Tav a good reason. And so on, the medrash goes through all the letters of the Aleph base until only the first 2 letters are left, the base and the Aleph. And the base approaches Hashem and says, Master of the universe, I want you to start the Torah with me, because I represent bracha. I begin the word bracha. I begin the word blessing. And I want you to start the Torah with me, so everybody will know that you represent blessing, that the Torah is a blessing, and our whole existence is a blessing, and you are a blessing. And Hashem said, yes, I'm going to start the Torah with you, because I do want the world to know that. And that's it. It's an extremely important concept. Hashem made it up to the Aleph, which felt a little slighted. And Hashem said, don't worry, you're going to be the first letter of the 10 Commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So what is the most important thing for us to internalize? That everything that Hashem does, no matter how inexplicable, every single thing is blessing. Some things that Hashem does are mind-blowing. They're just, how can this be a blessing? But it is the case. And it is not something, it is the case. And sometimes and often we even get to see it. Often we get to see it in our own lives, and sometimes in the larger picture. So may God help us that this thing turn over and we see the blessing in it. May Hashem comfort everybody. Um, it also reminded me of the conclusion of Yom Kippur. At the very conclusion of Yom Kippur, what do? We, as everybody remembers, it's such a dramatic conclusion for Yom Kippur. We say Hashem Hu HaElokim. We shout it 7 times. Hashem Hu HaElokim. 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 Anyway, we do it 7 times. And what is that saying? That's Hashem, Yud He and Vav He, that name represents Hashem's attribute of mercy. And Elohim, I'm not saying it properly because we don't say Hashem's name in vain for nothing, but that name represents strict judgment. So when we see something that looks to us like strict judgment, it looks to us like severity. The name is associated, Elohim is associated with severity. We have to know that it is really Yud He and Vav He. It is really Hashem's attribute of mercy, but it is at such a level that we can't possibly comprehend it. Another nice thing is that many nations in the world, I'm sorry, I asked Yasser to put it up, but I don't think he did. Many nations in the world are putting the Israeli flag over they're projecting it over the entire front of their Capitol buildings in England, in different places. It's if you go on on the Facebook post for tonight, I put up one of them, and there is a lot of solidarity, thank God, with Israel. So anyway, I okay, good. So on Chabad.org, they gave some very, very, very practical things that people can do. Very practical things that we can do. What was done in the past when we had shocking things like this that happened? For example, there was the Rebbe before the '67 war. The Rebbe started the Tefillin campaign. It's called a call to arms. That's how we arm ourselves by guys putting on tefillin and by women candlelighting 18 minutes before sunset. And by 3-year-olds, Hashem called for even 3-year-olds. Once a Jewish girl is 3, she can begin lighting candles, and it adds tremendous holiness. In school, what did we do today? In breakfast, the entire elementary, one of the young rabbis led everybody in the 12 Pesukim. The 12 Pesukim are special lines from the Torah that the Rebbe picked out for children to learn. And before the Six-Day War, when Six-Day War, yeah, before the Six-Day War, the Rebbe called for who? Did he call for arming Israel? No, he called for Jews, for Chabadniks around the world to make rallies and to have the children say the 12 Pesukim, and the same thing in the Yom Kippur War. And I don't remember which war it was now, but the Rebbe credits the victory to the children saying the 12 Pesukim. There was in one of those wars, forgive me, I can't remember right now. In one of those wars, I think it was the Yom Kippur War, the enemy attacked from the north, from the south, from the west, and for some reason, their tanks stopped and didn't go further. Their tanks just stopped instead of plowing over Tel Aviv, plowing over Yerushalayim, plowing over the Negev. They stalled for an inexplicable reason. And after the war was over, the Rebbe said, "What stopped those tanks? The children's 12 Pesukim. That's what stopped the tanks." So men can put on tefillin, women can do candlelighting 18 minutes before the sun sets, even if they're only 3 years old. And mezuzahs on every door, except for the bathroom. Mezuzahs on every door of your home, and praying, and so okay, good. So what else did I want to say? It's it's an ironic thing that Hashem hides opportunities for greatness in darkness. Like the whole thing with Purim. Purim was a horribly scary thing, absolutely horribly scary. And what did it do? It galvanized the Jews. The Jews in the Jews, especially in Israel, there's such insanity lately, such insane divisiveness. And hopefully this will shock everybody into unity and to realizing, what does it matter if you do yours your way and I do mine my way? What does it matter? And and anyway, so there's so much to Hashem and to even the Torah that we cannot, that is way, way, way beyond us. And we do the mitzvahs. That's what we do. We're soldiers. We don't necessarily understand everything that's happening at the upper levels. And I read something fascinating on Shmini Atzeres. On Shmini Atzeres, which was on Saturday on Shabbos, um, I was reading the Rebbe's writings, and the Rebbe said a fascinating thing. He said that the Torah is very, very intellectual, correct? It has a tremendous amount of intellectual stuff, and the Rebbe said that's not the essence of the Torah. The essence of that the intellectual part of the Torah is Hashem's outreach to us. The Torah is something that is beyond our beyond our ability to grasp, beyond anything we could possibly dream of. And the intellectual part of the Torah, which is challenging in itself, it's extremely at an extremely high level. That's merely Hashem's outreach to make at least part of the Torah accessible to us. So if we can't understand something that Hashem does, it shouldn't surprise us because Hashem is way beyond our ability to understand. We know because we know that Hashem is good, and we know that everything he does is good. The Rebbe once gave the analogy that, we think we know better than Hashem. And it's, let's say that if a little baby, if a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, would they be able, if they went to a lecture by a great university professor in physics, could they understand a word? No, they wouldn't understand a word. And yet, there's a much closer relationship between the child who one day could surpass the child and the professor, than there is between us and Hashem. We're Hashem's children. We are part of Hashem. But in understanding, we can't fathom so many things. So at times like this, what we have to do is focus on what I can do and increase what I can do, especially in the area of achdus, in the area of oneness, in the area of loving another Jew and treating another Jew the way you would like to be treated. And with that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to ask for any questions.